I really wanted to play, I suppose. It was just something at the time, hearing, you know, a lot of rock and roll records in the house, and, you know, I had other brothers who played, and it just seemed like there was a guitar lying around the house. You'd pick it up and try and get a couple of notes out of it, you know, or try and emulate what you heard. I really never sort of learnt, like in a technical sense, like in a, you know, theory or anything. It was just something, you know, I'd look at some of my brothers, look at the positions where their finger was, and you would hope that you would get it right, you know. And yeah, Malcolm, my brother, he was pretty much the same. And I think because you know, the two of us are little fellas, and you know, you would try and make chords and stuff. If you were a little guy and you're playing a big chord, you got like a bit of a stretch, you know. And you see some guys, because they've got big long fingers, like an Eric Clapton or something, you know, they've got this big finger stretch, you know. Almost, it looks better, their fingers for piano or something, you know? And when you're a little guy, you know, you sort of got to try and compensate, you know. And Malcolm and myself, if it was a major, like a major A chord, we would do, so we would, little chords like that. Well, I think with guitar, because at the first I wasn't really that much interested in guitar as like solo guitar, you know. But I think it's when a bit later on, you know, started hearing some of the blues stuff, people like Elmer James, and for rock and roll, you know, obviously Chuck Berry, you know. You want a bit of Chuck? I'll do my best. You know, you get that Chuck thing, and that was probably, I think, for rock and roll, and especially at the time, it was probably, you know, everyone's, you know, the bulk of people's idols, you know. And other people I would hear later on were like blues guys, you know, the Freddie Kings, and, you know, like with the, I think he had the sort of single note thing, you know, and which you see people like Clapton do, and then of course too, there's probably for the, you know, the space freaks, you got you know, Hendrix, you know, with the sort of kind of, you know, to me it was a little bit kind of, I suppose, a surf sound in a way. You know, it had that, you know, the Hendrix thing had that kind of surf thing, but with a sort of, you know, probably a modern day 60s twist, you know, with all the, you know, the freaking out with the whammy bar and the wow pedals and stuff. But I'll try it. I'm not a great Hendrix player, but I'll try a little. But he used to do a lot. You would hear it in people like John Lee Hooker and things where they... You know, so if you had it like the King Bee thing, it was like... So it was just more the groove of it, and you could sort of say, well, I can busk through that, you know. So, and probably in my case, there was a lot of, you know, was a lot of busking, because even when we first started, you know, when we playing clubs and bars, you know, Malcolm, he had more experience of playing around, and you know, we just do half a dozen, you know, rock and roll tunes, and you know, except probably with a lot more volume, you know, and played them as you know, everyone used to say, you know, is that a Chuck Berry song you were playing up there, you know? And you go, yeah, and they go, didn't sound like it. You see, well, I suppose people, you know, with a, you know, of an average medium height can sort of, you know, when they bend it, they best bend the string, you know? But with me, it's like I've got to sort of go... you know, you have to sort of lean into it, you know. And a lot of people, when you're playing on stage, a lot of people can say, "Oh, you move." There's a lot of movement, you know, but it's actually me trying to get around the fretboard, you know. So, and or if you do like a double, you know, it's just I suppose a thing of nature, you know, when you're playing live, you know. And then sometimes it's the movement itself that helps you get, you know, actually get the note, or you think, you think of ways of trying to, go, well, I've got to get that note. How am I going to get out? And like with myself, you know, your knees sort of crunch up together, and you sort of go, you know. It's almost like a virgin there. You know, if you had to get an effect or something, you would think of something, you know, that you could do with a guitar, like in, if you hear the song Jailbreak, you know, there's like, in the middle there's a guitar break with the vocal thing, you know, when Bon, he was singing, and, he would do this heartbeat thing, and then he would do Spotlight, and I would go, you know, you make a rude noise, and then you get sirens, you know, and rifles firing, you know, so you got that. You would try and think of a thing with how to do it on the guitar without it sounding like, somebody had put on an effect on it or something. So, and we always thought it was better too for, you know, because you were thinking about what you were doing. You try to do what's there off the record, but because I think, we got little, we're lucky in the form that we got little, breaks and stuff that you can sort of play, and it's just years of playing that you've built up things, you know, between you and an audience, you know. You get, and I suppose in from the early days picking up things, you know, you would watch when I would watch somebody like Chuck Berry or something, you know, he would always, especially if he was singing, you know, he always had little raps that he had going with an audience, you know. He'd go, "Hello," and the audience go, "Hello," you know, and you go, "Hello," and they go, "Hello," you know, and he had all of that. You know, he'd just go like this, and the audience would respond. So I would try and I thought, well, with Chuck can do, maybe I can do it with the guitar. So I go, you know, and if the audience went, "Hey," you go, you know, and you sort of build it up. So you get like, well, Malcolm and myself, it was, you know, we would, I got it mainly from watching him, you know, and he was always sort of, and if you hear a track like one of the new ones, Stiff Upper Lip, you gotta, as a kid I would sit and, I thought it was so clever, you see. I thought, well, you know, I could sit and knock these little things together, and you were thinking it was, you know, it was a good exercise for you, and you could sort of practice away with them. And then even in the track Thunderstruck, when it was the same thing. It'd come up like a, it started like a one-handed, you know. So it started that way, you know, and then you'd end up, We used to have a funny thing. It used to seem after 6 o'clock at night when the sun went down, or whatever time the sun would go down, there's when suddenly there's, it's a bit vampire-y in a way. The sound would start to fall, into place, you know. What sounded like, a shambles in the morning sounded like something very together at night. Well, if you look, it's got a kind of devil, see little horns, it's got a little red devil, you know. And if you would see on a lot of, I suppose, people that collect guitars, they would sort of go, one of the big collector items for a lot of years was the Les Paul Gibsons, with the single cutaway, and this was all solid, and but a very heavy guitar. And if you're a little guy like me, they can give you hip displacement, And so I always thought the SG was a lighter guitar because you could just pick it up like this. And, you know, you didn't really have to sort of sit and, like, with this big heavy thing strapped around you, you know. You know, if you weren't a hunchback, you would end up one, you know. Somebody once said that, you know, Angus could open just you know, an SG shop, you know, with one colour, you know, and they're all red. Yeah. But I think now I've got hundreds of them, you know, and a bit different, you know, some custom, some with, you know, like 3 pickups, some with 2, some like this, just a knockabout. I suppose where a guitar probably shines the best is usually if you're in a studio, you can, you know, you can get all your guitars and you can play them off. And in the band, because there's Malcolm, myself, you know, we always would compare to match up, you know, and he always is pretty much, he's got his old Gretsch guitar, and, you know, you would put the two together and it's just a case of just seeing when there was the right balance. Yeah, well, live, there's up there, I think there's four 100-watt super lead amps, and they're I think these reissue ones they reissued, and they tried to copy their older models. So I'm using them at the moment, and I've got an older one, a 50-watt that's around the I think it's around the early '60s, and you know, a strumming, you know, electrified folk group or something. So that's mainly why we had all the big amps up there. When I was younger, we would, you know, you'd fiddle about with stuff, but I used to always find that, you know, it was a bit of, you'd go to play somewhere and the battery ran out. You go to hit a wow pedal and you go, hey, look, no wow, you know. So they didn't last long, you know. And then after a while, I used to think, oh, it just clutters up your feet, you know. It was too much thinking, you know what I mean? And I thought, well, you know, you're playing in a rock and roll band, you know, and it was kind of, what was good about it was, you know, because a lot of people were using them at that time, you know, because a lot of trends come and people go, well, you know, the flavour of the day is this new pedal and that pedal, and if you see them now, it looks like a space station up there. You see the guys got all these racks of gadgets and stuff, you know. And we used to think that, you know, it was just one more thing to make more racket that didn't sort of enter into the music side of it. So we used to say, scrap that. Instead of resorting again to an effect or something, you know, you would just sit and, you know, try and get the best tone out of the guitar and, you know, but with as natural distortion as possible. I suppose these days it sort of lifted guitars back into the game, you know, because for a long time guitars were sort of like, okay, well, you know, they put them in a mix and pull it all back, and then they would just, well, if it was a solo or something, they would say, okay, we'll bring it up for the solo and then, you know, knock it back. So and being a guitar band, you know, we wanted the guitars right up front, so you got to, you know, at least for us, we thought, well, you know, they're going to hear us.